Pokemon Legends Arceus, for those who are unaware, is Nintendo and Game Freak's biggest change to the Pokemon series in quite some time. Shifting away from the standard catch and battle format, Legends Arceus features a much more open environment with an action RPG structure inspired by other recent popular adventure games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, however, players literally fall from the sky to find themselves in a prequel to Pokemon's 4th generation, Diamond and Pearl on the Nintendo DS, set far in the past as humans begin to learn more about Pokemon as wild creatures. Due to the fact that all of the game's characters are only just now learning about Pokemon allows this to be a great jumping off point for new players. The fact that it's been a few years since the Pokemon Company began their shift away from the handheld market means that there are plenty of new gamers out there who have had very little experience with large-scale Pokemon games on Nintendo's home hardware. The fact that this game uses an assortment of Pokemon from all eras, presents characters who are discovering features at the same time as the player, and even has a new, unique title, all cater towards growing the Pokemon audience to a new, possibly more hardcore home console base. This also feels like a great way to introduce younger or less experienced players to the world of action RPGs altogether. Instead of 8 gym badges, players can earn up to 10 stars as incremental ranks for the Team Galactic Survey Corps. Completing any freely chosen research tasks will grant the player research experience, and with each new rank, more rewards will become accessible. As nearly every critic and fan has said since this game's release, Legends Arceus was a much needed and long overdue change to the Pokemon formula. While I was skeptical of the game's quality at first, and you certainly have to get over the way it looks after a few hours of playing, this is the most I've looked forward to playing more of a Pokemon game, mainline or spin-off, in quite some time. When you get right down to it, the ultimate goal of most video games is just to be fun. Sure, some tell incredible emotional stories and some blow audiences away with unrivaled visuals, but mostly audiences just want something fun to play, that's easy to play, yet keeps things fresh throughout the whole experience. We'll figure out how all of this was accomplished as we discover what's so great about Pokemon Legends Arceus. As the game begins, instead of meeting a Pokemon professor, as is typical in Pokemon games, we instead find ourselves speaking with Arceus, the Pokemon god according to series lore. Arceus tells us to seek out all Pokemon in order to speak to them again, then the player literally falls out of the sky into the ancient Hisui region, an island later known as the Sinnoh region in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. The game presents the player's circumstances in a similar mysterious manner to the Mystery Dungeon spin-off series, wherein part of completing the game is understanding how the character found themselves in this situation. Many of the game's NPCs have similar physical traits to many characters from the Diamond and Pearl games, suggesting that these characters are the ancestors of those present in Gen 4, as well as serving as little references for those who played Diamond and Pearl over a decade ago. Additionally, some characters, like Leon and Charm, reference various trainers and gym leaders present in other generations of Pokemon, either as Easter eggs for longtime fans or possibly hints to a through-line plot in the future. The game is actually better written than most Pokemon games as well, and even feels less childish than its reputation would let on. Despite the lack of voice acting, the dialogue is well composed and feels much more natural than the elementary level power of friendship writing that usually fills modern Pokemon games. It is interesting that these NPCs occasionally reference the danger of the wild and the possibility of your character's death. It seems so blunt in the fanciful and family-friendly lineage of Pokemon games, though it actually feels a bit more honest and may even be another small step towards more serious Pokemon games in one form or another. There's actually a bit of interesting dialogue between characters who all share different ideas on how Pokemon and humans should coexist, or whether people should even be using Pokeballs to capture the free-roaming monsters. Some specific Pokemon are even seen as honorable nobles who represent the ideals of some of the people living in the Hisui region. It's a much more interesting dynamic and discourse than is had in most Pokemon games, where the player's relationship to these creatures has already been established. Befitting the scientific nature of this game's plot and format, there are plenty of challenges that the player must complete in order to fill out their Pokédex and properly study each species of Pokemon. These tasks could require capturing a certain number of them, defeating them in battle, or witnessing their use of a particular move. It's a great formula for learning about Pokemon in a world where they're still seen as wild creatures. This safari-style presentation starts right away as players choose their first partner. I like the fact that you don't just choose a starter, as if Pokemon were already domesticated at this time. Instead, you get a preview of coming attractions as you sneak up and catch the untamed Pokemon yourself. The game's catching mechanic is more in line with Pokemon Go or Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, rather than mainline Pokemon games. Oftentimes, you don't even have to weaken the wild Pokemon unless they're exceptionally powerful. Otherwise, just throwing a high enough grade Pokeball may often do the trick. If you can catch a Pokemon unaware by sneaking up and performing what's referred to as a backstrike, then you're in for an even easier catch without fighting at all. As was possible in the second generation of Pokemon, though rarely referenced since then, the player can craft their own Pokeballs out of a resource called an apricorn, along with some various additional materials depending on the rank of the ball itself. The ability to create your own devices for catching as many Pokemon as you'd like prevents the player from having to run back into town to restock on Pokeballs or drop off a limited amount of Pokemon in a world without regular knowledge of catching and storing these creatures. While you're out in the wild, you can craft whatever you'd like using the items in your backpack, but if you're working at a base camp, then you can even craft with access to any of the items in your storage. This is such a huge quality of life improvement that even crafting heavy games like Minecraft and Animal Crossing New Horizons have left out. As you complete the Pokédex, you'll not only learn the usual information, such as height, weight, and type, but you'll also learn which foods are most likely to draw this Pokémon out, as well as which items they may drop upon being defeated or caught. Naturally, you can also tell which time of day they're likely to be found, and as a new feature in Legends Arceus, even which weather conditions each monster will appear in. As has been the standard for the last couple Pokemon games, all of your Pokemon gain experience regardless of participation in battle, or even when the player catches wild Pokemon. The quick leveling does mean that you're always free to swap out a party member for an exciting new Pokemon you've come across. There's no harm in swapping in a vastly underleveled Pokemon just because it's your favorite, because constant competition is no longer the focus of this game. Alright, here's the thing. Let me break the fourth wall for a moment with y'all. I do my best to look at every game I play and analyze in a positive light because I want to foster a more optimistic outlook on video games as an art, as is the point of this channel. But every once in a while, I have to criticize the games I play in order to blow off some steam. And in the interest of fairness, and what I think will form the bases of a few interesting points later on, I'm going to go over some of the features I did not enjoy in this game to prove how great of a game it was in the end despite its flaws. First things first, the majority of this game looks like garbage. It's easy off the bat to say something like there are Wii games that look better than this, and there are, without exaggeration, many Wii and Wii U games that were more well-crafted and visually pleasing than Pokemon Legends Arceus. But for the same matter, you could say that about games on the Super Nintendo, because you also have to look at the scope and style of these games, and trust me, there were no experiences quite like this on the Wii. So while some of the low-quality textures or hurried modeling of geography seem questionable from the start, they can be shrugged off when judged in conjunction with the scope of the adventure available to players. Stylistically speaking, I'm glad they're attempting a slightly more realistic design without inclusion of the top-heavy 3DS models, but if they were going to forego a powerful lighting engine, which I will really dig into in a moment, then it's a real wonder why they didn't just decide to stylize the whole game like Zelda Wind Waker. It's kind of crazy how much Pokemon can get away with because of the casual and faithful nature of its audience. If Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, or Monster Hunter, just to name a few other popular RPG franchises, released a game with visuals of this caliber, the review scores would not be in the 80s. And I wouldn't just say it looks bad and leave it at that. Here's a few specifics that indicate the more glaring issues and just odd decisions in terms of where they settled for this game's quality. Most of this game's visual issues have to do with the combination of three factors: the lighting engine or lack thereof, low texture quality, and a short draw distance with no clever way of hiding it. It's shocking what a good lighting engine can do for even the most basic looking games. Even games with much lower texture quality than Legends Arceus still manage to look fantastic just because of a few beams of light and some nice shading here and there. This game has none of that, and in fact, shadows aren't even properly rendered from objects. Your own shadow will float away if you're standing on top of something because the world itself is not affected by direct light. Some objects like trees will even cast weird backwards shadows on bodies of water behind them. Beyond this, if you stand in most bodies of water or even inside caves, your character will be surrounded by this chunky white outline where you can tell it was rendered in one program and pasted into the game, like a poorly cropped image. Staying in the caves for a moment, they are a perfect example of the low texture quality and repetitive architecture of the world. The patterned walls and stretched, barren floors just feel so boring and empty. They remind me of the caves under the City of Kirby Air Ride for GameCube. The draw distance is also where plenty of this game's issues become the most obvious, and this was noticeable since Nintendo announced the game. The mountains and hills on the horizon always look bleak and polygonal. Game Freak didn't come up with any good ways to obscure the player's vision, and while that lets you see broad strokes of the world from a high enough location, there just isn't much to look at. The draw distance for Pokemon's movement is even lower than objects spawning in, so you can see their animations, such as flapping of their wings in flight, as it transitions from a slideshow to a smooth movement and back again as it travels. Alright, that's enough nitpicking. There are plenty of other minor flaws in the way the game looks, but let's be honest, the Pokemon games have never been considered the standard for excellent visual design. They've always looked nice, but even on the limited handheld hardware that the franchise saw the majority of its growth on, there were still so many games, even other RPGs, with vastly more impressive visuals. The enjoyable gameplay and all audiences' experience has always been Pokemon's bread and butter. Like I said, I have plenty of complaints about the way this game looks, but at this point, there's not much reason to go on through the rest of them here. I mean, you can see the footage yourself and make your own opinion. In contrast to the visual design, the sound design for this game is fantastic. Classic soundtrack pieces from Pokemon's 4th generation have been remixed, remastered, and spread throughout the Hisui region. And even Pokemon that have been carrying the same cry with them since virtually the very beginning of Pokemon still had a little care given to the quality of new cries in Legends Arceus. The echoes and reverb in caves are also a great way to balance the poor visual interest with at least something pleasing on the audio front. The game's various playable areas unfold before the player in a similar pattern to how this region would be experienced in Diamond and Pearl. The 5 free-roaming areas include pastures, swamps, coasts, mountains, and tundras. The environments themselves are fun to explore, each biome is well designed, and as the game goes on they only become more interesting and versatile. As have always been the visual focus in Pokemon games, the battle animations are unique, elaborate, and impressive. And while they could still use more details such as fur, feathers, and so on, the Pokemon all look good and fit the world in both scale and behavior. Some of the individual animations of different Pokemon actually allow us to see more details than we usually don't get to see of the actual anatomy of these creatures, like seeing Piloswine's eyes when they roar. Not only was this a huge step forward for the scope of adventure and exploration in the Pokemon series, but this is also the only time combat has ever really mattered in the franchise, or at least the first time in a very long time. You see, back in the late 80s, a decade before we had even heard of Pokemon, a Japanese game series called Dragon Quest had established the format of JRPGs that we know today, including a combat system that would be incredibly similar to the one that Pokemon players would find themselves accustomed to ever since the release of Pokemon's first generation on Game Boy. And unfortunately, the combat in Pokemon has not changed much since then. However, a few more improvements and changes have been adopted from the newer Dragon Quest games, as well as other modern RPGs, to finally bring Pokemon's combat into the 21st century, and up to the qualifications of a full-blown action RPG. Since wild Pokemon are liable to attack your character directly, you do actually have to use your companions to keep yourself safe, creating a much more balanced relationship between humans and Pokemon as they learn to coexist throughout this game's events. Thematically speaking, this also gives a solid reason for the Pokemon battle system, especially if this is meant to be very early in humans' interactions with Pokemon. As your Pokemon learns more moves, you can actually choose which moves it has access to in battle, like a quick bar of favorite abilities. Any moves not being used at the time or being overwritten for a new move can still be swapped out later on, which not only makes sense for a creature learning all of these abilities without a tiny memory capacity, but it also allows players to mix and match a lot more favorably should they want to swap a few team members and need to change which types of moves they have access to. Once a move has been mastered through experience and use in battle, it can then be selected to be performed in either Agile or Strong style. Agile style is weaker, but uses fewer power points and allows your Pokemon to attack consecutively. Strong style is obviously more powerful, but requires more power points and leaves your Pokemon open to attacks for a moment after. Using an Agile or Strong style to change up the turn order and gamble a little bit for damage makes combat more interesting, and with a couple more tweaks, we could have some really cool active combat systems in future Pokemon games. After a few hours of the typical one-on-one battle format that Pokemon fans are used to, the player will actually have to take on 3 foes at the same time with a single Pokemon of their own. From this point on, the battles finally feel fresh and interesting, as players actually have to think about turn order, defense stats, and type advantages to succeed in purposefully unbalanced fights. After this interaction, the player may even see wild Pokemon run over at the commotion of a battle that's already begun, giving them an additional enemy to defeat. All of a sudden, all of that extra leveling from catching Pokemon is really important, and the strong versus agile attack system starts to matter more as you really pay attention to the turn order to keep yourself from running out of healing items while out in the wild. And that is how you make combat in Pokemon really matter, by juxtaposing the player's abilities with the game's limited resources and life hazards, to make both choices and preparation matter. The feeling that Legends Arceus provides to a longtime Pokemon fan is the closest facsimile of the early Pokemon anime days that we've ever seen in one of the video games. Hunting for your first few Pokemon feels like watching Ash do the same back in 1999. Despite the low draw distance and plenty of other visual flaws, it's still exciting to see a new species pop into view. The sensation of throwing a Pokeball is also really satisfying, and honestly better than most other games' grenades or throwables. And it doesn't serve any specific function in the game, but players can call out all of their Pokemon into the field and just hang out with them. Some of them will even fall asleep if they're out long enough. I really hope the Legends series is a new recurring project, and we can hope to see improved versions of this in the future, maybe in a Legends Celebi game set in ancient Johto, for instance. Pokemon games have felt the same for a long time, and that in and of itself is not a bad thing. They're fun, simple to understand, and the majority of the player's enjoyment just came from seeing the new Pokemon each generation. We may not know what the Pokemon Company is thinking for the future of the franchise, or even other Legends games, but this is a big step in the right direction. It's important to take note that Game Freak themselves developed Legends Arceus. This wasn't some spin-off, and they even handed off this generation's remake to a third-party studio to get Arceus out on time. Even the fondly remembered yet modestly received GameCube Pokemon games, Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, were outsourced by a small company that has pretty much only made 3DS and mobile games since then. Legends Arceus is, instead of a spin-off, a new form of mainline Pokemon game as the franchise takes its first steps into the home console market as a serious competitor. My thoughts as I watched the credits were that Game Freak really tried some fun new ideas, and most of them landed with a perfect score. And if they just need to improve the visuals on future entries, then so be it. While I went into this game warily, it wound up being the most addictive Pokemon game I'd played in several years. By the end of the game, Legends Arceus had surpassed the levels of Easter eggs and references that I thought were included just as fan service, and actually presented a formidable origin story for a lot of the features known throughout the Pokemon franchise, and especially for many of the events and themes present in Diamond and Pearl. That is what's so great about Pokemon Legends Arceus. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of What's So Great About Gaming, as we took a look at Game Freak's huge steps forward in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Want to see some bonus content? Maybe support the creation of these videos? If so, check out the What's So Great Discord, Twitch, or Patreon. Links for all of those are in the description. If you want to hear what's great about another game, check out the link to our last episode, Dragon Quest III, on screen or in the description. And please take the time to subscribe to be involved in the discussions here. Thanks again for watching. Now go play a great game. We'll see you next time.